It is Sunday, September 19th. Glad you're with us. I'm Susan Hendricks. We do start with that search. It's on again now. The desperate search for the missing girl, Gabby Petito, 22 years old, engaged at the time to Brian. We are headed into the second week since she disappeared mysteriously. We don't know all of the details, and Brian is not talking. This case, which is getting international attention, has had several twists and turns already. The latest, Gabby's fiance, who police say could help them find Gabby, is also gone, nowhere to be seen. He didn't speak to police. He was home for a short time, so says his sister. The search for him is resuming this morning. They have a lot to go through, 25,000 acres in a nature reserve in Florida. Now, his family is telling police they haven't seen him since Tuesday. But Gabby's dad tweeted this: "The job's not done. Don't lose focus. Hashtag find Gabby." And we are thinking of Joseph, her father, today. Polo Sandoval is with me. There are two searches, as I mentioned, Polo, going on. Let's start with Brian. And in terms of the vast area where they are focusing on and getting right to it, looking for this guy and even bringing in bloodhounds to do so.
Yeah, it's a massive search that they have ahead of them here, Susan. Remember, they searched all day yesterday at this reserve in Northport, Florida, not far from the Laundrie family home, but the search turned up nothing yesterday. They had to wrap up for the night, and then they resumed here at about 7:30 this morning, back out again. And again, this is a search for now someone who's considered the second missing person in this case. Remember, police have been very clear that at this point there is no evidence suggesting a crime, so he's not a suspect. He's simply a person that's now been reported missing by his family, and that's really what's fueling frustration, especially for Gabby's family here. Remember, it was as early as this Thursday that we heard local law enforcement say that they were confident that they knew where Brian was, that they wanted to speak to him, even though he hadn't really been cooperating with investigators. But then the next day, on Friday night, that's when the Laundries called police over to report him missing. They offered authorities there some of his clothing so the canines can use to try to track down his scent. And that brings us to where we are today now. Authorities now trying to track down Brian, knowing that he may provide some critical information in that ongoing search for Gabby.
Yeah, and just her father, your heart really goes out to him as he's making the plea on Twitter saying this is not over, the job is not done. And the power of social media, Polo, we've seen here with how people are able to communicate now, even those in the area who may have seen Gabby and Brian.
We heard from police yesterday, Susan, that they said that they have received hundreds of tips. Now, the public information officer for the local police department said most of those tips have not really led them anywhere, but still, they continue to make that plea for anybody who may have any information, not just on Gabby's whereabouts, but now on Brian Laundrie, to actually contact them. And that's why what you're seeing right now is a multi-agency, multi-state search, really two searches. You have what's happening in Florida, what we've been seeing the last 24 hours or so, and then, of course, that search in Wyoming at Grand Teton Park, National Park, where authorities believe that Gabby was last seen. So you have these two searches that are ongoing, but the big question is, where is Brian right now? Remember, it's been 5 days since his family last saw him when he said he was going to go for a hike and never returned. So the big question is, do authorities think that he could still be in that vast landscape, wet, muddy, very difficult conditions that is that wildlife reserve in Florida?
Investigators do say, look, no crime has been committed here, but they're frustrated because they think that Brian may hold a key to where exactly she is missing. So they want to pinpoint their search, and they're having a hard time doing so because he won't talk. Polo, thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Now I want to focus on the search for Gabby specifically here. Just 22 years old, the FBI doing ground surveys in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. That is where Gabby's family believes she was headed to when they spoke to her last. And based on information maybe that police or the FBI gathered, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe explains what it means to have the FBI conducting this search or being part of it.
They will probably do things like bring in ground penetrating radar that is used to look for anomalies just beneath the surface to see if there are indications that something might have been buried or secreted away. They will no doubt be looking very closely at social media accounts used by both of these individuals. They were prolific social media users, so there's a lot of clues and things to be mined there.
Joey Jackson back with me now to discuss the search. Joey, there is a lot of manpower behind this. 50 officers on the ground, including the FBI, which really gives them the advantage, I would hope, that they can locate Gabby or Brian and/or.
Yeah, no question, Susan. Good morning. Look, the reality is that our law enforcement officials, particularly the FBI, are very well resourced. And that means that they not only have the manpower, but they have so much equipment. We just saw the piece there with Mr. McCabe speaking to those issues of what they have. And so they will be searching areas. They'll be looking at, of course, not only in those areas with the tremendous equipment that they have, but they'll be following digital footprints and any other clues that may lead them to where she was last really seen. And don't remember this, Susan, in addition to those resources, there's also surveillance. Now, a lot of these places that they could have been are secluded, so you could have the absence of surveillance, but you still have her cell phone. And with that cell phone technology, you can really limit and identify where she potentially was too. And so if there's any solace and hope for the family, it's the fact that we do have so much resources at the federal level, particularly to really solve these cases and really bring to bear everything that could identify where a person was last seen.
And because they were documenting that trip, and as most people that age, they were documenting kind of day by day what they were doing. And those on TikTok, Joey, I'll tell you, social media really has wanted to and really zeroed in on this case, wanting to help Gabby's family and Brian's family. And they're doing their own investigation, if you will, and seeing pictures of people that were in that area. So they're assisting as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important, what you just noted. You know, when we have a day and age of social media, whether it's Instagram, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Facebook, whether it's any other forum, you really indicate in those posts what you're doing, who you're doing it with, where you are, what's happening. And I think that plays a large role to piecing together where you particularly were. Remember, what happened was that she was in communication with her family until she wasn't. I believe it was August 30th or so, the last communication, and then the family reporting her missing a couple of weeks later, September 11th, saying, you know, we just haven't heard from her. So I think they'll be able to, in piecing that together, to identify when the last contact was and what, if anything, went amiss thereafter, and what, if anything, on her social imprint and digital imprint was out there. But we also have to look at text and that type thing, in addition to any cell phone and other activities. But, you know, the police are very good at what they do, and hopefully as a result of all of the things they've done in the past and all of the experience that they have in this area, they'll be able really to have some closure here.
I was listening to an investigator earlier saying that he was frustrated because he really wants to speak to Brian, who the parents say now is missing, and Gabby's family saying, look, he's not missing, he's hiding, a back and forth there. Because if they don't have anyone to talk to, if they had him to discuss, again, no criminal charges have been brought, there are none, but if they had him to talk to, maybe they can zero in on a certain area better.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so it's important to note that there's a lot of pressure for him to speak because he was with her. He can give really answers to critical questions as to what happened. When did you last see her? What, if anything, were you engaged in at the time? What particular area were you in? And so that would be extraordinarily helpful if he can speak. But remember, there's no obligation for him to do so because of the Fifth Amendment and rights against self-incrimination. And so I think his lawyers are just telling him not to say anything for now, to the extent that his person of interest can really elevate to him being a defendant in this particular case. Missing at this point, right? And hopefully she returns safely. But of course, there could be other nefarious things, we hope not, that are going on here.
Yeah, we're hoping she is found. Her father saying, look, the family can't eat, we can't sleep, we can't do anything. We need your help. Joey Jackson, thank you.
Always. Thanks, Susan.
And if you have any information at all that can help, just call 1-800-CALL-FBI.